Hello, it's September 30th, 2021, and this is the weekly Backdrop Developer Meeting. We get together every week to talk about the latest happenings in Backdrop, talk about priorities, unblock any issues possibly, and yeah, we have a short little meeting here today. We'll start off with some introductions. My name is Nate Lampton. I'm Quick Sketch on the internet. I'm in Oakland, California, and we have some fun stuff to talk about today. Let's go to Robert. Can you give an intro?
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet, coming to you from Altadena, California. And I'll pass it to Tim.
Hey, I'm Tim Erickson. I'm called Tim on the internet, and I am, well, the big thing for me this week is Backdrop Live. So that's my focus. 3 weeks from tomorrow is the next edition of Backdrop Live. So start getting ready, folks. I wasn't paying attention. Who's next?
Let's go to Joseph.
Joseph.
Hey, I'm Joseph. I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada. Back in developer, just helping where I can. Justin.
Justin Christopherson in Denver, Colorado. I help out as where I can as well, usually with infrastructure. Oh.
And Jen, I'm not sure if you're available to speak.
I'm going to try. Jen Lampton joining from Sacramento, California today. And thanks, Tim, for all your work on Backdrop Live. And thanks, Robert, for all your work on the doc site. I'm excited to look at that later. Is that everyone?
That is everyone. I'll keep going through the agenda here, Jen, unless you want to take your normal parts. I've already prepared sections.
No, my internet hasn't been real great. So if you could do it, that would be better.
Okay. All right, community update. We have a new Contrib application. Heman Shu 007 has filed a application, a Contrib application request. So we will get that started in flight. It's a little bit unclear what's actually happening with this request, but they did open a request, or an application, so we'll try to move that along. We don't have any new Contrib modules or themes, like entirely new modules, but there were new releases of several modules, including 2 recipe modules. I'm guessing, Tim, you might have had something to do with those, FAQ and testimonial recipes. Also, registration module, corresponding node references, and anti-scan all had new releases this past week. Let's go ahead and go to the forum post. We have a forum post every week soliciting ideas for things that we should talk about during this meeting, and we go through those usually first. One issue that Jen raised yesterday, or maybe the day before, was issue 5251. There is an issue in Backdrop 1.20 that came out 2 weeks ago, that the listing of custom blocks is pretty badly broken. When we were making the machine name changes, machine names are now consistently styled throughout all of Backdrop. There was a slip up in the implementation there that made it so that the listing of blocks got messed up pretty badly. But the fix was really simple. There was just a line that was deleted that reset an array back to an empty value that was deleted, and so we restored that line. And that issue's already been merged and fixed. I'll go ahead and skip ahead to an update from the bug fix version. So 1.20.1 is the next bug fix release, and I've gone ahead and already scheduled the release for taking place tomorrow between 10 and 2 p.m. 10 and 1 p.m. Pacific time. So that issue is 5267. We usually want to get out releases of the bug fix release of Backdrop 2 weeks after the release of a minor version anyway. So the timing is all working out. We have this kind of big problem fixed already, and we'll just get it all fixed up tomorrow. Let's see. IndigoZilla continues to push forward on PHPCS code style linting on pull requests. That's issue 5245. The latest update on that is that last we spoke on this, we'd hoped that Jeff's repository, Jeff Serendipity, had made upgrades to, we hoped that he'd upgraded his repository of coding standards to use the latest version of PHPCS instead of the old version that's actually from 2014 that Drupal 7 uses. But unfortunately, his repository is also just a fork of the Drupal 7 code base. It's not really any different, and it still hasn't done the upgrades. So we're at this point where we need to kind of decide if we want to bite the bullet and upgrade our PHPCS coding standards. There's a bunch of classes that determine how the code is parsed. Whether we want to do the work to upgrade them to the latest version of PHPCS and hold off on the GitHub integration, or if we want to go ahead and use the GitHub integration. IndigoZilla already has it working. There's not really any big holdups there other than where we'll pull the repository from, but that's kind of a minor issue. Whether we want to go ahead and use the integration that we already have working, that already does a lot of useful things for us, however, uses the old version of PHPCS, or if we want to do the work of upgrading to the latest version of PHPCS before we start building things on top of it. So that issue 5245, yeah, it would be interesting to get some other thoughts in there as to which direction we should take it. My guess is that IndigoZilla has been pushing this forward, but I don't think that she'll want to put forth the effort to do the upgrade because it's probably a substantial amount of work. But she got us into a great place here where it's like once we have a version of PHPCS that we've decided on, like we're in a good place here to integrate it into the issue queue. All of the integration, the GitHub action, and stuff like that, that's all ready to go. So that's where we are with that. Some decisions to be made there. Right. Let's see. We thought I put it into the agenda here, but I'm not seeing it. Robert, you raised an issue about contextual menu, quick access for editing things like layout, theme, etc. The issue is 2626, a nice number. Would you be able to give us some context for this issue and where we are with it?
Yeah, so the issue is whether to create a contextual set of contextual links for the layout that, with a little gear icon in the upper right corner that you can click on and go to configure or manage blocks, or from a suggestion from Clonos that would actually list what layout you happen to be on. And so for site builders, it's a way to quickly go tinker with the layout of the current page. And so I've got a chain PR into core to implement that. However, there is a conflict with Basis theme because the standard way of creating contextual menu links is it wraps some divs around the content that the link applies to, and Basis tweaks adds a negative margin to the top of the body so that if one uses the default placement of the contextual links, it will be covered up by the admin bar. So choices are to push down just for Basis, push down the contextual links, or for everyone, push it down by far enough to not conflict with Basis, but then it comes out a little lower on 7 and other links. Or tweak the Basis code so that if you have both an admin bar and contextual links visible, things come out in the right place. But that has a cost because it means even for really short windows, there's still a scroll bar. So that's where we're at. But there is some discussion about whether we should be adding more contextual links. I guess there's two concerns. Some people think contextual links are a little confusing and don't want to add more. And maybe this functionality should be in an admin bar. And the other issue is the concern that when we add the HTML that wraps the layout, it's essentially inserting a wrapper layer around the layout, and that might mess up themes or CSS that, for example, was assuming that the first thing you encounter after the body tag is the layout tag. So that's where we're at. There's people doing pros and cons. I mean, people on both sides advocating, should we put it in, should we not? If one of the options for not putting it in is to make that in a contrib module. And I've got a draft contrib module that I posted a link to in the issue queue so that folks can try it out. So we've got several options, and the question is kind of what direction should we go?
Yeah, I'm not sure I can answer this directly, but my thoughts is that if Basis has a particular need because of some CSS that it's added, where it's adding a negative margin or something like that, Basis should also include in its code any adjustment for things like the admin bar or, in this case, contextual links. So contextual links would do its normal thing, and then Basis would also include, we'd add new CSS to make it adjust the contextual link that's there. And if somebody had overridden Basis or used a subtheme or something that wrote that CSS file, well, that contextual link would be hidden behind the admin bar, and that's not a horrible trade-off. Jen, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, Basis is a really good barometer of how hard this is going to be for existing sites to deal with a change. And the fact that Basis has to implement something special to get around something new we add in core should be a huge red flag that, you know, a huge number of contrib themes are also going to need to do something to get around whatever we put in core. So if we are going to put something in that we know is going to break contrib themes, a really good example of that is like what we did with the dismissible messages, where if by default it's hidden, and then we add something to make it show up, then at least we don't break existing sites. We make the new feature sort of optional. And that might be one way that we could address that problem.
Yeah, a part of me that thinks that this might minimize impact a little bit, maybe not minimize, but reduce impact, is one nice thing is that contextual links themselves are like always administrative only. So we won't be affecting anyone's public front end presentation. And I'm not really sure how that weighs in, you know, like we don't have a calculator for like backwards compatibility impact calculator. That might be a kind of cool thing to put together that says like, is this change acceptable or not?
I want this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a funny idea, isn't it? You know, that this does lessen the amount of impact that this has. I think that this is a big gaping hole, though, that we don't have any way to see what layout you're on and to just edit the layout. I think one of the most early hacks that I learned in the very first versions of Backdrop was that when I want to edit a layout, I edit a block instead, and then I close the dialog, right? And that's just like, yeah, and there's no other way to see like what layout you're on other than to like just follow through that little hack. And so this seems like it's, you know, it's something that should exist without needing to do a workaround like that.
So one of the things I did in the contrib module was I added, in a contrib module, you can get away with adding another admin setting a little more easily. And so the setting is basically a set of checkboxes that says whether you want to push down the contextual links for the default theme or the admin theme. And so if you use Basis or a sub-theme of Basis, you can just check that box and it'll get pushed down and things will be happy. And we could conceivably do that. If it were in core, we could also have that sort of a checkbox setting. My concern was that people would have to know it's there and where to go to find it. And that's harder to impose in core.
It could be the kind of thing though that we have in config somewhere where it's relatively easy to adjust when people find it, and all new sites would get it on by default, so that anyone who knew the feature was there already isn't going to be bothered by it, and any existing site where people didn't have that feature isn't going to be bothered by it. But if they want it, they can go turn it on.
Yeah, how crazy would it be to, because that
So
setting to me
you're talking
sounds
about putting in a setting to turn on or off the whole contextual links change, right? Not just whether we push it down on the page, but enabling or disabling contextual link layouts at all.
Yeah, I was thinking the other way, but this is better.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Describing that setting sounds hard and confusing. Like, do you push it down or not? But actually saying, do you want contextual links on layouts at all? Seems like a better question to be asking people that they would be able to understand. And this gets me to my next thought, which is, what if there was a way to enable and disable contextual links everywhere they are? Like, I want to turn them off on comments because I think that's stupid having them on comments, or I want to turn them off on blocks, layouts. Like, provide an option to turn on and off contextual links everywhere we have one of them, and give an option everywhere. But I don't know if that's too granular or unnecessary. Don't know if that meets our 80%. But it's a thought.
So in Drupal 7, there's an in-place editor for panels that when you are looking at a panels page, just has a little bar at the bottom with a button. And it's just the normal page normally, but you click it and it adds drag handles and style things and buttons to all of the elements on the page. We could do something like that, where there's a button in the admin bar that enables and disables them all globally.
Drupal 8 do that?
It does do that. Yeah, it does that for the purposes of making it touch accessible, because the hover, contextual links aren't available if you're on a touch device whatsoever. So yeah, but I think Drupal is still like Backdrop in that it's dependent upon a lot of wrappers. So the wrappers are added regardless, but then it's just like displaying like hide or show the little edit icon on everything. So I don't think that really addresses the problem that we're facing right now with like layouts. Like, I think that would be a great thing to also separately address. But we still have this problem.
But my
that's
point,
like, if you did turn it on, it would probably be hidden in, same as if you were hovering over with the mouse. Sorry, Joseph, go ahead.
right. I don't know. Never mind.
Okay. Well, anyway, those are some thoughts. Maybe this whole like having a setting for everywhere that you turn these things on, maybe that's also like going too far with things. Maybe we just need some mechanism to granularly control which contextual links are turned on and off. And I'm not quite sure what that is. Like, it even could be like documentation, like maybe here's how you use a hook, contextual links alter or something like that, to say, here's how you can turn it off easily or work around the problem. I don't know.
So would it be to, if we just consider we're going to turn it on or off, would it be too baroque to just have a config page for layouts and then put that checkbox on that config page?
Just on the layouts. So make it a layout setting rather than a contextual link setting.
Yeah.
We used to have a settings page for layouts, but it got removed with the flexible layout template because the only thing on there was the layout list. So the /settings page isn't actually a settings page anymore, but we could, there's an issue to fix that and put one back. So that this could be a good onus to do that.
A part of me wants to make a setting for contextual links, like a settings page for contextual links, just because we only have one administrative settings page on the whole site, and that's the settings page for admin bar. And so when you go into the admin bar and you go under administration, there's only one item inside of there, and it's admin bar. So I know it's a little confusing me saying it, but admin bar is the only settings page under that category in the drop down list. And so contextual links are an excellent example of another administrative feature that seems like it would at least we have a nice home for it. Like it would very clearly live in that area.
So then we use hooks for other modules could add their own contextual link related settings to that page. So, blocks could turn on and off their contextual links.
Yeah, I haven't looked at how contextual links are set up anytime recently. It would be nice if modules declared when they were adding contextual links, but I don't think that's the case right now. I think right now modules all just say, that they implement hook contextual links or something like that, and they just do it. That there's no listing of all of the possible places links are enabled.
No info hook.
Yeah, there's
They
no
can do
info
it
hook.
with a pound attached property, but you can also do it explicitly just by adding the appropriate wrappers.
Yeah, so I guess that now we're kind of expanding the scope of things, because if we need API additions like this, it'd be I guess this might even be a 1.21 issue anyway, because it's adding a new feature. But yeah, I would think something that would be an info hook that says these are the things that I have, and then contextual links module would loop over all of them and just provide a global setting, like turn this on or off. So each module wouldn't need to alter or provide its own form. There would just be every module would say, I'm declaring these contextual links, because some of them, like layout module, have multiple, right? Like, do you want them on blocks and do you want them on layouts? So we can't just turn it on and off per module. We need to actually have a setting per place within that module. I don't know. Are we going down this road too far? It sounds like nobody's strongly opposed, but we're not super hot on it either.
Well, I think the problem it's solving is a huge one, right? Layouts not being discoverable and not knowing which layout you're on. That's a huge issue, especially for people coming from Drupal who don't know what layouts are. Anyone new to Backdrop who just can't figure out which page they're on. And I think that having a solution for that is going to be great. My only concern is how we can do it in a way that is not going to negatively affect existing people. And I think we talked about a couple of options of ways that people can, we can work around that. And I think that moving forward with it on any of these directions is good.
Yeah.
So how about if we can put the contrib module out there now, but say this is going to migrate into core fairly soon. And then that gives us some breathing room to discuss further, try out other things.
We can make it a featured module so it shows up at the top of modules page. It contrib group something.
Right.
Is it that raises the question for me though, is that if we encourage people to enable it and then bring it into core, what are the implications? What do people have to do then? If they've already installed and enabled the module?
Oh, well, since the module hasn't been released yet, if there's a way to put in a detection, you know, put in the code now, the way of detecting whether it's in core. Well, I'm not sure how to do that just yet, but it seems doable. So that
You just have the module disable itself.
yeah, or just not make any changes and not disable. I guess the module could actually disable itself, but I was just thinking that the module doesn't do anything once it's in core.
Mhm.
I mean, we have a process for moving modules into core where we add them to like an array somewhere, and when the update hook runs, it'll disable the contrib module and replace it with core, because we've done this with a bunch of stuff like CK editor, and
Oh,
so I think that's not going to be an issue when we get to it.
Okay, but that is what would happen is the module, there would be a way that would disable the module if people had it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, nice, good.
Yeah, just poking through here, it looks like a file module, layout module, menu module, node module, and views module are the ones that provide contextual links. Why isn't comment module in here? That's weird. I know comment module has contextual links. I really say maybe they don't in Backdrop. I don't know. I don't like them though. I find it odd because there's already the edit link everywhere you see a comment, and so it's like it's weird that there's two ways like right next to each other.
I've always thought we should have something better than contextual links, but I have no idea how I would build something like that.
Yeah, that issue that was raised in the in this issue, that we should do something else other than contextual links, I think totally should be like, let's move that into a separate thing. Because I think that if there's an alternative, something that puts it up in the admin bar or something like that, I think that would be awesome. But it sounds like they would mostly be alternatives to each other. There's contextual links module, you'd turn that one off, you'd turn on, admin bar edit or whatever, that switches that behavior into admin bar.
Yeah.
So, there is one issue. As part of that PR, there's a bug fix to contextual module, which manifested. I mean, it manifested in this development, but I think it's a real bug in the module, which is that if you have nested contextual links, I mean, something with contextual links wrapped around something with contextual links, the current behavior pushes the inner one down so that the gears don't overlap, which is good. But if the inner thing happens to be really narrow, the current code pushes the trigger outside of the hover region so that when you try to move your mouse over the gear, it vanishes.
Oh, I've had, yeah, I feel like I've had that already, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess maybe that should be a separate issue just for that behavior and a separate bug, but then bug fix PR just for that behavior. And so pull that out of the current issue.
Yeah, I think that would be good. We might get hung up on this other one for a little while, and if it's just a simpler bug fix, those move forward a lot quicker. Okay, well let's move on from that, I think. All right, next up, let's see. We don't actually have any other issues from the forum post. We had some things about backdropcms.org, the docs website, but we're going to move that discussion outside of the meeting. Welcome, Phil. Hope you're well and able to speak, and I'm not just prompting you suddenly.
Sorry for joining late. I'm just checking to see what you guys are talking about.
No problem. Well, we just wrapped up an extensive conversation about contextual links. And now we're on to other items. Let's see. And where was I going next? We are going to have the release date tomorrow for 1.20.1. And we don't really have any other 1.20.1 issues that are raised here other than full PHP support, issue 5076, but there hasn't been any update on that issue this week. For 1.21, that's the next minor version that will be coming out January 15th, 2022. Yes, Tim?
Can I ask about the bug fix release? I believe that the little new notification and the change to the notifications panel, I think was RTBC, didn't get into the last release. Is there any chance of getting that in, or is there a problem with that one? Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I don't know which one
I'm
you're
sorry,
talking
I
about.
should have looked it up. It just hit me. It basically just puts a little new recent flag or so. No, it adds the date to the notifications in the dashboard notifications panel. And I thought it was RTBC. It didn't get into the last release. It's not like critically important, although if we did get it in soon, it would help maybe flag people about Backdrop Live. Just
Yeah,
make it
if it's a UX change, it can go into a bug fix release, right? So
Right.
that sounds
I
like
was
that
just
qualifies.
Yeah, but it's been sitting there for a little while, so I just wanted to see if there was any reason. Maybe somebody was thinking about something or.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it in the RTBC list. I've been checking that
Okay.
a lot this week.
Okay, well then maybe it got moved out and I didn't notice. I'll look it up. Thanks.
Okay. Let's see. So 1.21 that comes out in January 2022. We had an issue that was moved into that milestone this week, and much to probably everybody's surprise, the issue was opened, pull request was filed, and it was merged all together. So, so I guess I'm just gonna say, hey, we've got a new feature in for the next release already, and that's a cross port of adding an anchor option to the scale and cropped image effect. The issue is 5080. Gregory and Herb Duel just tag teamed that one and knocked it out real quick, where it's a simple cross port adding new feature to an image style that yeah, it's a real simple fix, but it's a nice new feature. All right, and then we have a wish list item here that Jen added, I think, issue 5044, add additional CSS classes to regions for flexible layout templates. This one doesn't have an advocate yet, so it's not officially in the next milestone. But I think maybe, Jen, you're just soliciting, hey, it'd be nice if someone volunteered for this.
It got tagged with the milestone, even though it didn't have an advocate. And so I wanted whoever tagged it to know that I'd removed the tag until it gets an advocate, so that if they want to be an advocate for it, it could get its tag back. I didn't want that to just disappear and people to wonder why it wasn't in the release. But I think we've talked about it enough. We can take it off the weekly agenda.
Okay. All right. Well, we don't have any other big milestone items in 1.21 yet. The idea is that next week we'll have more of a planning meeting to discuss like wish list items, maybe give a little bit of prioritization to some, solicit advocates for new issues, that sort of thing, during next week's meeting. The only thing left on the agenda for today is we have one active initiative, that's telemetry. Telemetry has clearly moved forward quite a lot in 1.20. We have the telemetry module. Sites are reporting now. I haven't checked backdropcms.org to see how many sites are reporting yet, but I'm just gonna go look. Backdrop telemetry.
Any idea if the MariaDB issue was figured out, or is that still a work in progress?
Can you elaborate on what that issue is?
It seems like it's collecting MySQL, but it's not exactly collecting whether or not it's MariaDB. And then version numbers are kind of goofy on the database side of things because of that.
Yeah, they're vague because things like this, like these two are MariaDB for sure because the MySQL version is 10.2 and that only exists in MariaDB and not MySQL.
Looks like, yeah, it seems like the other day the 10.1 or 10.1, 10.2.10, they weren't showing up. So the fact that they're now showing up is good. Maybe that we just didn't have enough to be able to collect those. I think for the most part, it's probably fine on the version for now, but it might be something down the road, I guess, to differentiate whether it's MariaDB or an actual MySQL.
Mhm. Yeah,
all
I've
I
seen
got.
a couple of other things like the GitHub action that we're using, for example, that installs different versions of MySQL the same way that we install different versions of PHP for our automated testing. Takes one setting for MySQL version, but you can pass in 10.2 or 10.5 and it knows that that's MariaDB, or you can pass in 8 and it knows that that's MySQL. But that clearly will only work for a certain period of time until MySQL gets up to version 10. And then now what are we going to do? Joseph, do you have something to add?
I was just going to say that we might want to make it more generic as well, because there are other MySQL compatible alternatives like Percona.
Very true. And I think that was, yeah, I didn't even think about Percona. Yeah, I wonder if we should start segmenting those. You're totally right. We can, I think, separate them, but I'm not totally sure how that would work. Like, because all of them all use the MySQL driver. Like, Backdrop doesn't know or care really if you're using MariaDB or MySQL. It's just like, it's the same to it. It's all using the same PHP like PDO driver. It's all just MySQL, and there's only one database abstraction set up in Backdrop, and that's for MySQL.
Right.
So
But
it's a little bit interesting that we don't really
the
care.
database string that gets reported to Backdrop has the version, which program it is in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it probably is kind of going to end up looking a little bit like user agent checking, you know, where it's you kind of run some regex on the string and then make an educated guess as to what version or what software you're actually running.
Right.
I do have a quick question regarding telemetry and PHP. Any idea if there's a way to basically ask the system what versions of PHP are available on the system? So, for example, a cPanel, CentOS, you can have multiple versions of PHP and then you can kind of flip back and forth between them. Is there any way to query the system and say, yes, I know you're using PHP 7.2. What else do you actually have available to you that you could use?
I don't know of a way for that to be possible, especially in a generic fashion.
Seems like it could be a security risk.
Yeah, you might be able to do something like determine if the site is running on cPanel and then get the cPanel version. And then from the cPanel version, you might be able to derive what versions of PHP are available based on cPanel. But I don't know, it's going to be very specific.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if maybe, at least on the Linux side, if there would be some kind of a shell command that could be run or something to just do a quick check, whatever the output is, then be able to return that back for telemetry. The idea here is, sure, we can figure out what version is on, that the system is running on, or that the site is on. We may have a lot of hosting providers out there that the site's on a slightly older version, but it's capable of much newer versions. And Greg brought up the topic of trying to increase the minimum requirement for PHP to at least 5.6. Everything else behind it is best effort. Personally, I'd like to see that pushed up to 7. But again, it's kind of, this is where I was kind of like, hey, can we collect telemetry on this and try and figure out, do these people that are still on version 5, do they have access to 7? Could they move their system to 7 and they just don't know that they can, or maybe they're scared? I don't know. Just being able to collect more data to be able to make more informed decisions on whether or not we could move the minimum requirement up without impacting a lot of people, I guess is where I was going with this. But it may be too early in this discussion to even try to go that route. It's just kind of a thought that I had.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I think that it's a good idea to try to figure out ways that we can upgrade the PHP version, because really, like, in the past, we've kind of delayed this decision because we're like, well, what we're doing is we're supporting the oldest version of PHP that is supported by a Linux vendor. And what that had been is that it had been CentOS, has the longest life cycle of any distribution of Linux. And CentOS had a version of PHP that was supported up until like the end of last year or something like that. And now multiple things have happened. For one, that version of CentOS, CentOS 6, I think, is now completely end of life. So PHP 5.3 has zero support from absolutely anyone at this point. And second of all, CentOS itself has been discontinued. so the longest life cycle Linux distribution is now basically not there. So it probably shortens the window of all PHP support to a smaller amount now. And
Also,
so,
PHP versions are only around for a year now. And so that changes, like everything's going to be changing much faster going forward.
yeah, but there was still the LTS versions of Linux distributions were kind of where like they had like Debian is still a good example, that Debian's support for PHP extends past the support window for PHP itself. So PHP only officially supports it for like a year, but Debian will support it for like a 4-year window.
Now, since I'm not in that particular side of the industry, 15 years ago when I started getting into this, I think it was around PHP 5, 5.1. You know, back then the mentality, the mindset was you get on that version, you stay on that version as humanly long as possible because you don't want things to break. And you don't move forward until you absolutely have to because you don't want things to break. Like Jen just mentioned, with PHP 7, they've taken a completely different approach. I don't know exactly what they have done, but it's more of almost like a systematic revisioning, kind of like what a lot of things are going to in the industry, to where, yeah, you can do these incremental upgrades on version 7 and not worry so much about things just completely blowing up. But the enhancements of moving from 7 to 7.1 to 7.2, it's a speed boost, like a 20% speed boost each incremental version. So it's kind of like me as the site builder, I'm like, no, I want to be on the latest version because it's going to make things that much faster and better. And so now it's like I'm waiting on the software to be supported on the newest version. So I find myself, instead of lagging behind, I find myself wanting to actually push the envelope. So I don't know if you guys have kind of noticed that with yourselves, if that's kind of what's going on with the industry. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've noticed that tools generally, like cPanel, like you brought up, are way more flexible now than they used to be. Like moving between PHP versions isn't nearly as difficult as it used to be. So at least the process has gotten a lot easier. Like you say, there's a lot more carrot now that things are generally better in the new versions of PHP and a lot faster. But they also increase the stick a little bit by shortening those support lifetimes. So yeah, the PHP is definitely pushing everybody towards you need to be moving faster as application developers. Like, you know, they don't want us to be using the older versions of PHP. But as for like, is it easier and or like what is our mentality on it? I don't know. It depends on the hosting provider, I think, a little bit. Because I know like backdropcms.org, which runs on Linode, like we've got Justin who's maintaining our servers for us, but it's not running a fancy infrastructure like a platform as a service like Pantheon, where you can just switch it and then it's like done. It actually takes like a fair amount of effort. Justin, do you want to weigh in?
Well, I think that the mindset is slowly shifting toward, Docker, so you can swap PHP versions in and out as its own, and pushing it up to production more easily using Docker containers. So I think we'll see more of that in the future too. And it'll be probably less support by the Linux distributions and more focused on kind of Docker rollouts. But I don't know, we'll see. The time will tell.
Yeah. Well, one thing I think is clear is that we need to revisit our minimum PHP version and possibly our policy around PHP versions. Because right now, like, it's getting to the point, it's kind of like Internet Explorer support where it's like, it's getting ridiculous. Like we've done our job, supporting these old things as long as possible. And it really is like time for us to consider moving forward, even within the 1.x release, because our plan for the 2.x release is that it won't come out for another 2 years probably. And it's just getting, it's already ridiculous, and waiting 2 more years is just even more so.
From my standpoint, if we had more people that could deal with the backwards compatibility, then I wouldn't be as concerned with trying to push out the PHP version. But there's not very many people that can maintain what's already here. And it's kind of like, let's make their workload less by not requiring them to try to maintain stuff that a very small edge case user base needs support for. Yeah. If we had a perfect world, we'd be able to do it all, but it's kind of one of the things right now, we just don't have the overhead to be able to handle that. So I love that we've got the telemetry going, because I think that's going to give us some really, really good direction on making decisions, hard decisions like this. So that's freaking awesome.
Yeah, well, that's where we started on things. Telemetry, actually, we're going to give a little update on that. And Tim, I was going to hand it to you to see if you had anything you wanted to bring up.
Okay. I'd like to caution us to realize that, like, for PHP versions, it might be a year or two before it's helpful in this kind of backward looking way, because a lot of the people that are using really old versions of PHP will probably not be, adding telemetry to their site. So we won't really know how many people are using the old versions. However, as time goes on, that data will be more and more useful. So, but right, anyways, in terms of the overall update, I think we're my sense is right now we're sort of in policy decisions making mode. There's some discussion going on sort of at the PMC level about, opt-in, opt-out stuff and all of that, and how we're going to handle that. I've been wondering if the telemetry initiative is officially like, if the initiative was to get it into core, and now that initiative could fade away and we could just continue to develop it, or if we need to continue the telemetry initiative to develop it. I'm not sure about that. But anyways, yeah, I don't have answers about the status of the telemetry initiative. Really right now, questions, because we're in this transition period. And I think we can, I feel like pretty much everything is going to be, I've written a draft blog post sort of announcing telemetry, but it also is a little bit on hold because there are some policy decisions that I feel like need to be made. So.
Okay. Well, I think many initiatives are, the decision point of when it's done is decided by the lead. So that's you. So you get to decide, if the initiative itself is done or not. But yeah, I do think the blog post is a good idea. Definitely a good idea to be like, a conclusion point. If we want to wrap it up at that point, that would be a good place to just put it all together.
Yeah, well, part of my motivation was just wanting to ask people to turn on telemetry. And as we talked about last week, it'd be nice to have some place to point them, like, so they could get more information about it before we ask them to put it, to enable it.
Yeah.
And so, Nate, if you haven't seen it, I'll send you the link to the draft blog post. And it could be that I could just weed out some of the policy stuff until that's more official. And I could just focus on what's happened already, as opposed to where it's going. Although I'm a little bit nervous that once we start to publicize this, then right away we're going to get questions about the policy moving forward. And if we don't have those answered, maybe it's better to, to not make a big deal about it until we have answered those questions.
Interesting. Okay, well, I'll take a look at the draft, and we can kind of work from there. Okay, well, we are past the top of the hour, so we normally wrap up about now. So let's, say adieu. Thank you, everybody, for being here this week, and we'll get together again next week. That will be the planning meeting. I don't think that we reopen the survey, correct, Tim? Okay, so that's fine. We'll probably just kind of come with ideas and start hopefully we'll get 1 or 2 volunteers, to advocate for particular issues. So scour the issue queue for things that are of interest to yourself, or things that you think are just priorities, and we'll kind of start kicking through them next week. Okay, well, thanks everybody for being here this week, and thanks everybody out there for watching.